This is Counselor Graham Campbell, the co-convener of SNP Socialists, and I'm being joined, yet again, back for a return to business as usual. My co-convener, Janis Wilson. How you doing?
Good evening, Graham. I'm very well. How are you?
It's been a while, isn't it?
Quite a while, yeah. Can't even remember last time.
It's not like much has happened since we last spoke in the summer.
Nothing at all.
It's not like there's been, massive crisis in the world or anything like that, or that the Gaza bombing is supposedly coming to an end and has actually not come to an end, but everybody is saying that it is and it's not. There's also war in Sudan, war in the Congo,
Congo,
and typhoons in the Philippines and hurricane
Yemen.
Laker. And Yemen's still going. So apart from that, nothing much is happening at all.
No, but there's been quite positive things happening stateside, which we could perhaps touch upon later on.
Oh, I think we should just start with the good stuff and then end up going further down the hill as we try. But let's celebrate our victories while we can. This time a year ago, as you'll remember, I was just coming back from Washington, D.C. and from New York, being over there in America, ready to see history made. And it was made in a way that I didn't expect, because Kamala Harris, not only did she not win, but she lost, importantly, amongst a lot of working class people, mainly because of the cost of living crisis at the time. And here we are a year later, and New Yorkers has shown us the way, because despite a vicious anti-communist, anti-socialist propaganda campaign funded by billionaires and Andrew Cuomo, the sleaze merchant, being backed by Donald Trump himself, trying to do the dirty and paint Mamdani as a anti-Semite, the majority of New Yorkers, 50+%, voted for him. Over 1 million people voted for him, one of the largest turnouts, I think, since 1969 in an election for mayor of New York. So not only did he win, but he won decisively on a progressive program, decisively on, cost of living, on rent controls, and on really free public transport and all the sorts of things that democratic socialists should be arguing for. And I hope that the mainstream Dems get to listen. But it's interesting how few of those mainstream Dems actually backed him. Very grudgingly.
Yeah. Good old Bernie, good old
AOC?
Yep, that's it. Sorry. School brain on. Yeah, I think and Obama apparently refused to.
And Cory Booker kind of very grudgingly, but people like that, mainstream, Democratic leadership did not properly back him,
but he won.
But he won without their help.
Yeah, he did. And it's such a positive thing to have happened given the last year America has been through. Just amazing. And there was a blue wave that night. And I think the latest Social Democrat was Seattle, I believe.
Yeah.
Which I think was announced yesterday. I can't remember the lady's name,
but
yeah, so it's looking quite hopeful, positive over there. Certainly dreadful for Trump. And quite apart from the blue wave, there's also the Epstein files and the released emails and whoever Bubba is. Things are not going well for Trump at all. So yeah, good on America.
Good on America. You're beginning to sort of turn the tide against this tidal wave of shite. But obviously we would expect a Democrat and a progressive Democrat to win in New York, but it's all of the fact that Democrats also won in New Jersey, Virginia by margins of like 15+%, from red to blue, as they say, in America. So that tells you that many of Trump's core supporters is deserting him, because he has presided over 1 year of the cost of living rising even further than it did under Joe Biden. And it's reckoned that the cost of living has increased by somewhere between 9 and 15% on basic food items, depending on where you look. Quite apart from the attacks on healthcare and Medicaid and all the things that were happening in that budget shutdown they just did, or shit down, as I prefer to call it, that is an annual occurrence every year where the Republicans play chicken with people's livelihoods, and public sector workers don't get paid. And shutdown was the longest ever government shutdown, and it was sold out by 8 Democrats who chose to settle with Trump's people. And I hope that those Democrats get targeted mercilessly by a reviving, more radical Democratic base.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, what these elections didn't have that Trump's had last year was Elon Musk's interference.
Mm-hmm.
So Trump without Musk's dollar isn't doing too well. Long may it continue.
What do you think it tells us, though, about the message for, centrist politicians, shall we say? And some would say that the leadership of our party is in this category. But what should it tell social democratic and left-leaning parties across the world about how to infuse young people, how to stick to your message, how to be standing up people? Do you think those people in standing up to the far right are going to learn those lessons?
Absolutely. So just look at Zach Polanski and the Green Party here. They're now just below Reform in the polls. And I think the difference between Zach Polanski and a centrists like Keir Starmer came to power offering change, but not the change that people wanted. And I think Labour were doing so badly, and I think the left-wing, the young progressive people had lost hope. But now they've got someone to vote for, someone who represents them, someone who's going to give them what they've been crying out for: tax the rich, tax the billionaires, fairness, equality, and they've got something to vote for now. And I think it should be telling centrists like our party leadership that they have to be more dynamic, they have to be more
Radical?
flexible. Sorry?
Radical?
Absolutely radical, yeah. Because the young people are there and they do want to vote, but they're not going to vote for people who they don't think represent them. And I think what Zach Polanski and Mamdani prove is that when there's people there that young people can connect with, the young people will come out and vote.
And I think also the key thing that I've seen and been impressed by Polanski is that he's very firmly stood against Zionism, against the status quo, against the billionaires, for tax rises for the rich, uncompromisingly. And the more he's done that, the more he's gone up in the polls. And he's been not
Yes.
afraid to go on to the right-wing media and challenge it and say it to their faces, whether they're Piers Morgan or whichever moron they put up in front of him, Trevor Phillips included. These are people who have spent their whole careers being the voice for billionaires in mainstream media, and he's very good at dealing with them. And I wish we had somebody like that who would fight them and was also for Scottish independence. Interestingly, he is.
He is. He absolutely is. Yeah.
Quite good for the Scottish Greens, I suppose, given that they are such an independent party. But interesting, like to say though about what this says with the wider thing about younger people in politics. It's pretty clear that Mamdani appealed to that younger demographic because they're the ones who are suffering, low paid work, precarious employment, skyrocketing rents beyond control, and that's not greatly different from people living in cities on this island. So if somebody is able to appeal to that demographic and mobilize and sort of infuse them, well, there's a lot of candidates for that position, aren't there? We know that 70% plus for people under 24 are supporting of independence, but that doesn't seem to be reflected in support for necessarily us as the SNP as the pro-independence party. What about you? What's your thought on your party and the Corbyn Tara experiment? I mean, obviously there's been a lot of nonsense about it and by it, but what do you think that project?
I don't know. I'm getting Alba vibes from them. They started out as something that gave hope to a lot of people, not me, where Alba's concerned, but they were, this party of progressives, independents that won in 2024. And when Zara Sultana joined, I was really, really pleased and I was really hopeful. But I think the way she's been treated, the way the party is running at the moment, is they don't have good leadership. They don't have, they're giving out mixed messages. I read somewhere today that they are now considering supporting Scottish independence before they stand candidates next year because I think Zach Polanski has just has sent their world tumbling, because there is now a young, dynamic person who represents young, dynamic people. And I think Jeremy Corbyn, I love Jeremy Corbyn, and I think he's fantastic. But I don't think he is the person to represent the kind of people that Zach Polanski is representing. And also, Corbyn and Brexit, is he not still supporting Brexit? Did I not read that today?
I honestly don't know. I haven't read anything about Corbyn's current stance on it, but he's
I mean, I'm
certainly
sure
not in favour of a referendum to go
correct
back
if I'm
in.
wrong here, but I'm almost certain I did read something that said, has he not learned his lesson?
Right.
All he's offering is he's not Labour.
Hmm.
Tax the rich, etc., but he just doesn't have that finesse, pizzazz,
Well,
razzmatazz. I don't know.
one of his independent MPs decided to resign from the party. Now, I mean,
The
one of the
transphobe.
unique things, well, I don't know if he is or not, but the point is he's resigned before the party's even been formed from the
Yeah,
party that he hasn't formed yet. It's one thing for the left to split and divide itself once it's actually formed a party, but this has been unique in the splitting before you've even formed, but it could be that he's probably on the more right wing end of the spectrum of what they've got in that 10. So that probably isn't necessarily a massive disadvantage to him, but he's got his own electoral mandate, that guy.
yeah,
And therefore it indicates that what I was writing about in our conference bulletin about your party, I wrote an article
hmm
about it, which basically analysed there's 3 different projects in amongst that umbrella of people. You've got Corbyn's project, which is essentially to, I think, build a sort of peace and justice style coalition of anti-war activists and him, which will be led by the MPs. Then there's people who believe in sort of basically rebuilding a Labour Party Mark II. Then there's people who actually want a democratic, socialist, grassroots-run party. And those are the people I have some sympathy with. And Zahra seems to be speaking to that constituency. And I'm
yeah,
pretty sure that makes up the majority of their activists. And I've said this before, that I think that it's impossible that a group of people, socialists in Scotland, most of whom are of the age that supports independence, will vote for anything other than supporting independence.
yeah,
I think if they do form, and if they do, they will become a factor in the pro-independence left and the electorate. It will have an impact on other parties like the
yeah,
Greens. But then, of course, the Greens are fighting for the same territory and for the same voters. I think so. It depends if they can get their act together quickly. It depends if the party in Scotland is actually independent
yeah,
and of the party in London, and it depends if they have a good set of programs other than, we're not Labour and we're not, we are linked to Corbyn, and it all depends on how much control the members actually have of the organisation. We pick sides on this. It might not be my party, but I want the people in that party to succeed in
yeah,
forming an organisation of the far left that is credible and is actually, legitimately member control. If they succeed in doing that, then it might be an addition to the pro-independence left. And
Oh, I mean, yeah, and the more left-leaning MPs you can get in Westminster, the better, because that way you can form a coalition. I think that the trick, the battle now is to make sure Reform don't win enough seats to have the majority. But I think they've peaked. I think we've hit peak Reform, and I think, judging by the by-elections down south, the by-elections up here, and I know Reform are coming second here, and the one in Wales that where Blythe won. But second is not winning, and I think all they've got is hate. All they've got is racism. And once you've got somebody else offering the polar opposite of that, then,
Yeah.
Farage, I think, will hopefully fizzle out at some point before the next general election.
I think
I am.
clearly it tells us something, doesn't it, though? It tells us that, there was a very strong left-wing wave of people against reform. It
Yeah,
came from all parties and all corners, and actually
yeah,
a lot of young people voted Plaid tactically, partly, but also
yeah,
because people offered something hopeful.
yeah,
And I think that's a precursor for what will happen in Wales. I think Plaid will win the election. I think Reform West, they might come second, but they will be defeated.
mhm,
And I think the same will come here. There are
yeah,
parts of Scotland where they will pick up some votes, but I think
yes,
their peak moment it could have passed, but we have to make it pass by doing a
Yeah.
lot of anti-racist work. And I've been involved in lots of anti-racist work over the summer. Formed a local group in Springburn, and we preempted the ground of the racist who's now a reform councillor in our area, and she stopped doing surgery, she stopped doing her little campaigns locally, and because she knows that the community is against her on these questions. So we all have to do our strong anti-racism work, show solidarity
No,
with each.
absolutely.
Turn up to Falkirk and support them. But
Yeah.
particularly in 2 weeks' time, we've got the St Andrew's Day Anti-Racism March, which started 30 plus years ago when the far right previously tried to do the flag reclaiming thing. And we was formed to oppose the National Front back then. The STUC took it on, the Black Workers Community led it, and has done so every year for the last 30 odd years. And they're doing it again on November the 29th. So we want people to come to that, and we particularly want SNP members to come to that too.
Do you want to give the details, Graham?
Yes. So it's St Andrew's Day, collecting at the I forgot the name of the park, but it's near Trongate. It's a little gathering spot, not
Glasgow
far.
Green.
It's not Glasgow Green itself. No, it's a bit further away from Glasgow Green, but not far. So if you know Trongate, Glasgow City Centre, there's a small park there where the gathering point will be, and it will eventually end up at Adelaide's in Bath Street as the closing rally. So please get along there, gather yourself up at 10:30 for an 11 o'clock kickoff, and you'll be definitely going there. That's Barrowlands Park. I couldn't remember. Barrowlands Park. Thank you. That's what it's called. It's that little patch of ground just to the right of the Barrowlands and on the Gallowgate. So please turn up there. Please turn up in your numbers and show that Scotland is united against racism. And finally, we had our little conference, didn't we? We went to Aberdeen, and we bunch of people called SNP Socialists produced their first physical real-world magazine called Red Thistle, which we produced for the conference. And we now have an excitingly newly launched website with articles, and we're now become. Can you believe this? We published a 70-page handheld thing, which was brilliant. I got a copy of it here in my bag. But I'm not going to show you it because you've seen it. But we were very pleased that it arrived on the final day of conference, and we were able to give it to delegates. And the response has been very good. We've had Hamza Yusuf wrote in it, Alison Thulis, Kirsty Blackman, many of the rank-and-file activists from across the country wrote about them. Philippa Whitford, indeed. Yep. Anne McLaughlin wrote about carers. I wrote my piece. You wrote your piece. What was your piece about?
The rise of the far right.
Indeed. Very important. And we had pieces from Stirling and Perth and from Dundee, outlining what the activists there have been doing about fighting racism and fascism. So I think we had a really good spread, and I'm hoping that we will do it again. And obviously, the Red Thistle is obviously open for contributors from any part of the left. We'll certainly have open pages, but we've certainly become the centre of debate at conference, and many of our resolutions got passed overwhelmingly. The trade union group's motions on taxing wealth got through comfortably with a massive majority. So the policy pushing of the platform of the SNP to the left is being successful. What we have to do now it's SNP policies to make it government policy in our manifesto. And that's the difference. It's a massive chasm between what the party thinks and what the activist thinks and what the government thinks is prudent. And we have to try and bridge that gap. Because I think if the government wants to be re-elected, and certainly if SNP wants a majority, they can have a more radical manifesto than they are likely to put forward without our input. So I hope they listen to us. This is us telling this. Listen to us, because we're right about this. Zohran Kwame Mamdani, the mayor of New York City, proves that we're right about this. More radical policies on these wealth distributions, on taxing the rich, taxing property. It's popular.
It gives people hope. And I think that's one thing that people have now got back. And it shows.
Yeah.
It shows they've got something to vote for.
Give them something to vote for, not just against.
Absolutely.
Well, with that bombshell of hope, how very daring. Let's come to the end of 20 minutes of really good to catch up with you, Janis, and we must do this much more often than we
should. We absolutely should.
So see you next month.
Bye for now.
Bye.